Hi guys, and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be showing you how I transformed this area at the bottom of my garden using these gravel grids to create a really strong and easy to make DIY gravel grid base. So this is a fantastic alternative to concrete bases, and as you'll know if you've watched the channel before, I've made a few of these, one for my garden room and also one for my pizza oven. So I'm definitely not saying that concrete bases aren't a great option. However, if you're looking for an easy DIY solution that's very strong, has fantastic drainage, then gravel grids are a really great option. So to get started, I'm going to be digging the area out to around 140 millimeters because just like a concrete base, we're going to need to create a solid sub base for these gravel grids to sit on top of. And this is just a case of rolling your sleeves up, doing a little bit of hard work and digging. And once that's done, you're going to end up with a nice area like this that you can start to add that sub base to. So as I mentioned before, this is going to be around 140 to 150 mil, and that's going to allow you to add around 100 mil of sub base, and then on top of that you're going to have your 40 mil grids filled with gravel, and then probably another 10 mil or so on top just to hide the grids and make it look nice. So you can see the grids just laid down here, and luckily I have two sections wide here, so that's perfect. It means I don't have to do any cutting. But before we start laying anything down in here, I'm going to go over with the whacker plate and just really compact this down and compress it. And the reason for this is we just want to make things as solid as possible right from the get-go. Also, with any job like this, I really like to try and level things out as much as possible right from the beginning. So even with this very basic part where we're just digging out and whacking the soil down, I like to make sure that the soil is as level and flat as possible, and it just helps as you start moving through the layers. So you can see here, I'm just going to get my level, sit on top of the soil, just try and check it and make sure it's something like, now obviously at this point it doesn't need to be perfect, but if it was, let's say 20-30 mil out, or there was massive bumps or dips in it, I'm just going to use the rake like I'm doing now just to take the high spots off and just to fill any low spots, and then just go over it again, you know, just with a little manual rammer, or potentially get the whacker plate back on it just to get it flattened out at the level that I want it. So there you go, one last little check, and I can say that I'm pretty happy with that at this point. So following that, we're going to start actually adding the sub base. Now for the sub base here, I'm using MOT type 2. This is slightly preferable to MOT type 1 just because it's going to drain a little bit better. You could use something like MOT type 3, which has no fines in, it's much more of a clean stone. The issue with that for any kind of base, in my opinion, is it's not going to compact quite as well as it does with the fines in. So for me, MOT type 2 is the best choice here. And as you can see, I'm going to go over that with the whacker plate, and this is going to compress down really nicely. You'll also notice I didn't put a membrane under the MOT type 2. If you do have a really soft ground, then I do recommend putting a membrane of some kind underneath. However, for me, I've got really nice firm ground, so by all means, if you're in a similar situation, you can just go straight on top with this MOT type 2. Okay, so as you can see here again, I'm just going to be getting the manual tamper out there. I'm going to be checking the level, and just like the soil, I want to get it something like, you're never going to get it 100% perfect at this point, but you know, it was something like that. I've put another layer of MOT on top of that, and then I'm going to go over and whack it again. And as you can see, this is actually at this point looking really quite flat. You can see how well the whacker plate is leveling this out, and as you're going over with the whacker plate as well, you can actually feel when there's divots and low bits and high bits, so that does make it a little bit easier to manually rake it over and level it out. As you can see there, I've got a piece of timber with my level on top. I'm just going to work my way around, check it roughly, just to get to a point where I'm reasonably happy with it. And you know, so far so good. There are some low spots, you can actually see the low spots under the timber there, but you know, it doesn't need to be absolutely perfect at this point. It just wants to be somewhere like, so a couple of little diagonal checks. Again, reasonably happy with that, so we can move on to the next stage. Here we go, I'm just going to show you a little quick view now of the back. So that's the little retaining wall at the back. We've got about 50 mil from bottom to top there, and again at the front we've also got about 50-60 mil as well there. And once I was done with this, I moved on to adding the membrane. So this is a weed membrane, it's non-woven. This is definitely what I would recommend for this type of job. Unfortunately, as you can see here, I under-ordered, I didn't order enough. This was a Sunday as well, so I couldn't get the exact same stuff. However, I did have some membrane in the shed that's pretty decent. It's not as good as the white stuff, but it helped me fill that gap in, and it meant I didn't have to wait until the next week to get started on this. Okay, so once I was happy that my membrane was down, I moved on to adding my screed layer. This layer is going to help us to completely level this area out. It's going to really fill in those final low spots in the subbase that we've previously made. Now for this you could use sharp sand. However, I've opted for 2 to 6 mil clean limestone. The reason for this, it spreads out really nice and evenly, and there's no chance of it clogging up the membrane. Obviously with a sharp sand it does have a lot more finer particles which can get into that membrane, clog it up and affect drainage. For me, the 2 to 6 mil limestone is superior in that regard because it's just going to let the water flow through freely. And it does a really good job of leveling out as well because it is quite fine. You know, the smaller stones are all the way down to 2 millimeters. And that results in a really flat, level base to start adding our grids to. And let's start doing that now, and I'm going to show you how quick these things go down. So as I mentioned before, these are 12 grids all pre-connected together. These are from a company called EcoGrid, and these are just so convenient. Just compare this with like laying a concrete base. So at this stage now you'd be mixing concrete, you might be putting rebar in, you've got to shovel it all around, you've got to float it all, you're waiting for it to dry. It's, you know, a big job. You've got a full day's worth of work. However, when you opt for something like gravel grids, especially these ones from EcoGrid, you know, we were just over a few minutes there. Really, really fantastic. And even at this point, this is actually really, really solid to walk on. Okay, so you can see this now. I'm just going to give you a little close-up. We'll walk along it just to look all around it. I will say at this point, it is actually very solid to walk on. Obviously, the grids are not weighed down with the gravel yet, so there is a little bit of movement, but because we've got so nice and level underneath with that clean limestone, the screed layer, it is actually really quite solid to walk on at this point. Okay, so the next job is to add the gravel. Now this is from a company called Gravel Master. I use them for my driveway as well, so these are a great company if you're looking for affordable gravel, much cheaper than kind of the local DIY sheds that are going to be in your area. So I highly recommend these guys, go check them out. And you know, filling the grids up themselves is actually extremely easy. We're just going to be barrowing it around, pouring it in, raking it across, and just filling all the gaps. That's really as simple as that. There's really not very much to this at all. Okay, so you can see there, I've got it filled up, and then I'm going to start going over with the whacker plate. And what you can actually see this doing right in front of your eyes now is compressing and compacting these angular stones down into the grid. So you can actually start seeing the grids through the gravel now. You know, the more I go over it, the more visible they become. And the reason for this is the stones are actually dropping down into the grid. And because they're angular, they're going to get really, really nice and tight. But, you know, following that, I give it one more layer, around 10 to 15 mil on top. And you can actually see the finished result here. This is a fantastic solid base, guys. I'm going to be building a structure on top of it, which you will be finding out what that is in the next video. But I have to say, at this point, I'm extremely happy with this. I think it's done a fantastic job. You can see I've continued around the front of the gym there with the gravel, just to kind of give a little bit of continuity. But in terms of a finished job, a solid base, I'm really happy. Let me know in the comments what you think, guys, and I will see you in the next video.